The following is a talk which I gave this morning, the third Sunday of Lent. How present are you to the people you meet every day? How present are you to members of your family in your own home? How present are you to yourself? How present are you to the world around you? It has been said that a relationship between two people is as good as the communication that exists between those two people. And this is often said of marriages. And what is communication? Communication is presence. When you're really present to somebody, you really are communicating. Because when you're present, really present to somebody, you are really listening. You are really hearing them because you're deeply interested in them. Well, we live at a time in our world, in our society, when presence is weakening amongst people. It's not what it was. People are not as present to one another as they used to be. Because we live in an age of technology. And technology has taken quite a grip on our lives. For example, there are many work situations now where machines are taking the place of people. For example, when you go to the bank, you can make a deposit without talking to a person. In fact, you can make a deposit from your home just by making a call or by mail. And then, of course, we have computers. And people spend hours on computers. Lots of people become addicted to the computer. And so they cease to be present to people because they're so locked into the computer. And then, of course, we're so accustomed to television in our homes. And how present are we to one another because of the presence of the television set, which is on all the time. And then when you visit somebody's home, how often does it happen that the people never turn off the TV set while you're visiting? So the quality of presence keeps weakening in our midst. And as presence weakens, loneliness becomes more. There's a lot of loneliness in our world, a lot of isolation. People hunger for presence. And then we have the gospel of today's Mass, an extraordinary story of presence between two people. We find Jesus sitting at the well, at Jacob's well. And a woman comes along with a bucket. She's going to draw water. And Jesus immediately starts a dialogue with that woman. He says to her, "Give me a drink." Now immediately Jesus is ignoring existing laws of that time, because There was a very important law that said that men should not speak to women in public. And here was Jesus ignoring that law. And then there was another sacred law, and it was that Jews were not supposed to dialogue with Samaritans. And here was Jesus, a Jew, speaking to this Samaritan woman. Jesus ignored the laws because he wanted to reach out to this woman. He wanted to be present to her. Because this woman probably didn't belong. She didn't see herself as belonging. She probably experienced a lot of rejection. And Jesus knew this, and he was determined. He wasn't going to let this moment pass without reaching out to her. So he opens up this beautiful dialogue. And he says to her, "You come to this well to draw water to satisfy your thirst." But he said, "I can give you a living water. And if you take of that living water, you will never be thirsty again." And of course the woman is fascinated by what he's saying. And she's already fascinated by the fact that here is a man who's talking to her in public. And here is a Jew who is speaking to her, a Samaritan woman. She's probably overwhelmed by the whole happening. And so she dialogues back with him. And he talks more about this living water that he wants to give to her. And she becomes interested and more interested. And of course, as she dialogues with him, without her knowing it, she's already drinking from that living water. Because the living water that Jesus is talking about is himself. He wants to give us himself. He is the living water. And if we learn how to drink in the water that is Jesus, we never thirst again. So in the dialogue, this woman is going deeper and deeper into communication with him. And she's drinking at deeper and deeper levels from the living water that is Jesus Christ. So in that encounter, this woman is changed forever. She's transformed. She's a new woman. And she leaves there and she goes and tells her friends that she has found the Messiah. But what a beautiful encounter, and what a beautiful lesson for us. And to think that this woman had been married several times, and Jesus was able to tell her that the man she was now living with was not her husband. But that didn't get in the way of Jesus wanting to really meet this woman at a deeply present level. Spiritual writers tell us that the spiritual journey is a process of learning to become personally, passionately present to a God who's personally, passionately present to us. What a beautiful way to put it. To think that God at every moment is personally, passionately present to us. But how often are we present to him? I think most of the time we're not even aware that God is personally and passionately present to us. And the purpose of prayer, the purpose of coming to Mass, the purpose of reading the Bible, the purpose of spiritual reading, is that we would learn how to be present to the one who is eternally present to us. And that is communication. That is love. And that's what Jesus wants for all of us, because he wants us to drink from this water that will never leave us thirsty. He wants us to drink from himself. We come to Mass every Sunday, and repeatedly we hear the words of Jesus, "You must eat my flesh and drink my blood." And what is that saying to us? What is Jesus saying to us when he says that? He's talking about presence. He's saying to us, I want you to be so present to me that you will eat my flesh and drink my blood. And I want to be so present to you that I will allow you to eat my flesh and drink my blood. It's called the sacrament of presence. And the sacrament of presence is really very healing. We talk about the real presence of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. We're told that he's really present. And when you come and kneel before him, you're kneeling before somebody who's completely, totally, and really present to you. As we learn to become present to God, to Jesus, personally, passionately present to him, then we learn to become personally, passionately present to people. The two presences grow together. And as we learn to become present to people, we become present to God. And you see, as presence increases in our lives, as we become more present, loneliness disappears. When presence really arrives, loneliness goes out the door. Because when presence really arrives, love arrives. In the Gospel of today's Mass, that woman was transformed. She was changed forever. She had a whole new beginning, a whole new life, because she'd been touched in a very deep way by the presence of Jesus Christ, who was completely and totally present to her. And she was open to that presence, and she was able to receive from it. She was able to drink from it, and she became a new person. And as we learn to be present to one another in that way, to be completely present to the other, great transformation can take place. Because God can use us in that moment when we're very present. He can use us, and he can be very present to that other person in us and through us. And a great transformation can be brought about in that person's life. But Jesus came to teach us presence. He came to teach us love. He asks us to be present to one another and to him. And if we do that, we will change forever, and we will bring about in our world a tremendous healing effect. Amen.